I am super, super excited today to have Bill Farrell with me. Um, Dad extraordinaire, amazing ministry. Bill, bring us up to speed, like where you are in life, and give us a little capsule of your ministry right now. Like, what are you doing?
Okay, so my wife and I several years ago started writing books and doing conference work while I was pastoring a church down in San Diego. And the conference work got to the place where it was so busy for us we started doing it full time. And we were out about half the year speaking at different churches, a couple of different countries a year that we would travel to and speak mostly about marriage and family. And like everybody else in this world at the moment, we have and then COVID happened, and COVID shut down our speaking ministry in a week, and everybody went home. Everybody got sent home from work. Everybody got sent home from school, and and suddenly my phone started ringing because people realized we don't know what we're doing. We're spending 24/7 together with people that we love. We're not used to this much time,
Yeah.
and we're realizing we kind of are deficient in how to run our lives, how to run our marriages, how to run our families. And and I started an online coaching ministry. Yeah, meeting with people on Zoom, and that has become a full-time pursuit now. So I spend every week talking to people about their marriages and their families, and Pam and I are doing a little bit of traveling and speaking because things have opened up. I don't ever see us going back full-time traveling like we were, just because. Um, One, the online thing is meeting a need, and second, as you get older, travel gets harder, and so I just don't see us traveling like we used to. But I'm doing the same thing I've always done. Is that when I met Christ as my Savior at 16, and then I fell in love at 20 and realized there was a better way to do marriage than what I had grown up around.
100%. Yeah.
I just got a passion in my heart. I want to teach other people what I have learned. And I get a lot of satisfaction out of helping people figure out what actually works in life.
Excellent. Excellent.
And so this gives me an opportunity to do it. And I'm meeting with people every week who are asking the driving question that drove me is how do we do this? Like people would tell me, Bill, you just need to love your wife. I'm like, I want to. Now, how do I do that? And you need to raise up your kids so they're godly. I'm like, I want to do that. How do you do that? And it went everywhere from spiritual disciplines to managing relationships. The question I kept asking was, how do we do this? And I'm finding out that a lot of people are asking that same question, and they have the right intention in their heart, but they don't know where to start and they don't know how to actually do it.
So your coaching comes alongside them and it
Yeah.
helps them answer that question.
Yeah.
Awesome. Tell us where you are with your kids and your grandkids. Where
Yeah.
you're
So
at with that.
I got through, we raised three sons. So growing up, everything in my house was broken because kids just like to wrestle. And all three of those kids are married now. All of them have kids of their own. So my oldest granddaughter is 18 years old, and my youngest grandson is about 8 months. And from 18 to 8 months, there's eight of them running around, five boys and three girls. And two of them live in the Phoenix area, and one of them lives just outside of Louisville, Kentucky. And I think my greatest accomplishment in life may be that my boys are three of my best friends, and all of my daughter-in-laws get along with each
Well, let's talk. We're going to have are you opposed to having a personal coaching session with me today?
Yeah, I would love to, James.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, let's talk about the how. How did you make your boys your friends? What were the things that you did right? And then we'll talk about the transition of, let's talk about the younger years, and then we'll talk about what you did right in the old years as you launched them. Let's talk about
Okay,
the younger years.
so if I were to sum it up into like what are the two things I did that I would recommend to anybody who's raising kids? The first one is I determined I was going to be present in my kids' lives. Like one of the most amazing things to me about our faith in Christ is that every time God calls people to do something big, He makes a promise that I will be with you. So in Joshua, when he said, "Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." And when he commissioned the disciples in Matthew 28, He said, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." And there's something about the presence of God in our life that makes a big difference. And and I took that to mean I need to be present in my kids' lives. So it came down to things like when they were really little and they wanted to talk to me, I would get down on their level so that they were looking at me eye to eye. And I determined early on I was going to answer any question that they asked. And if they went too long and they were wasting time, asking question after question, I would say, "Hey, look, we're going to pick this up tomorrow because we all got to get to bed." But I just determined early on if they have a real question, I'm going to take time to answer it. Not because they necessarily were interested in the answer, but I wanted them to know I was interested in them. And then when they got older and I was busy in my career, I told the kids, "Guys, you have my phone number. If you ever call me, I will answer the phone. So, like, make sure it's important if you call me because I may be doing something that's important at work, but if you call, I will answer." And there were only a couple of times when I had to like follow up with them and say, "Hey guys, calling me up to ask where the cookies are in the kitchen, that's not an important phone call. But if if there's an issue going on in your life, I am determined to be there when I can."
So the first thing was you wanted to be present, right?
Yes.
But let's talk about that, Bill, because how many books have you and Pam written?
We released book 61 last year.
Okay, you're a busy boy, and you
Yeah.
had a busy calendar of traveling all over the world, the
Yeah.
country, crisscrossing it back and forth. How are you present while you're like really busy in the middle of your career? How'd you pull that off?
Well, I found that the busier you are in life or the more productive you want to be in life, the more intentional you have to be with your schedule. So I would block out time for my kids. So even though I was busy, I had a busy schedule, running a church, doing traveling. My boys knew that there was time that was solely theirs, and when I gave them that time, I would shut down everything else. I even had a routine when I would leave the office when I was pastoring. There were three markers that I would drive by on my way home. The first marker was, okay, Bill, start shutting down the office, close down, what you've been working on so that mentally you don't take it home. The second marker was I started to rehearse what am I going to say to Pam when I walk in the door and I greet my wife. And the third marker was how am I going to greet my kids so that they know I'm excited to see them and dad's home. And if I passed those three markers and I wasn't quite ready, I would take a second lap.
When you say markers, what do you mean? You'd pass like a rock or something, and you're
Yeah, it
like,
was either a
okay,
rock or a storefront or a sign on the road. I just mentally picked out three different markers that would remind me, okay, Bill, you need to shift. When you get home, you need to be home. And so I made a habit of doing that. And then as cell phones became popular, if I was out away from home, I would call them up and I would pray with them before they went to bed. I would talk to them about, hey, what happened in your day today? Here's what happened at Dad's day. So I would stay connected by using technology. And then every year, every summer, I would plan a father-son trip, and I would recruit a bunch of my friends who had sons to go with me, so that my kids not only had me, but had their friends along on the trip. And we would go do things that mom was not interested in doing. So we would go hiking, we would go down to Mexico, we would go fishing, we would do all kinds of fun stuff that guys like to do, so that the guys would have an uninterrupted week with their dad. And
I've done
so,
something similar with that presence where I would schedule in a biking, or I like to do rowing, full body rowing. It's called
yeah,
sculling.
yeah,
And my kids always gave me this, "Oh, Dad, I'm busy. I got the homework." It's like, I don't care.
right,
You're gonna miss I don't I am kidnapping you for 1 hour.
right.
You will be back. And they're like, "Oh, Dad." And it was like that really being deliberate about the schedule
Yeah,
and providing that necessary leadership, like you're important and I want to
yeah.
be with you. It sounds like you've done that. Like you really embodied that.
I relied on it because I realized if I'm going to be productive and I'm going to be involved in my kids' lives, I'm going to have to be like diligent over my schedule, and I'm going to have to slot in time for them, and we're going to have to hold to it. It's going to have to be a priority, and I can look back on it now because I'm on the other end of parenting. And I can say it was all worth it. Like all the times that I interrupted my career to spend time with my kids was worth it, because today I got a friendship with them that gives me access to my whole family, and they're developing the same balance in their life where they're all busy, they're all productive, but they're making time for their kids.
That's beautiful. That is
Yeah, and
beautiful.
if you make the time, you tend to find it. If you wait for the time to happen accidentally, life gobbles it up.
You know, are you familiar with, I believe it's called Parkinson's Law?
No, I've not heard that one.
Basically, work expands to the time allotted.
Yeah,
You have a
it's
week to do
exactly.
a project, you're working for, and my experience as a realtor is the stuff in the house expands to the house allotted.
Yeah,
So if I sell like a single guy a 30, 3,000 square foot house, he's got to pack every inch of that house with stuff.
exactly.
It's
Because
Parkinson's law.
yeah, I've heard it more. Free space must be filled up.
Yeah, and this revolves around our calendars as well. And
Yeah,
we'll just whether we amuse ourselves to death on YouTube or whatnot.
yeah.
So you really were deliberate. Now you said there were two things that you did. The first one was presence.
Yeah, the present. The other was I became a student of each of my kids.
Student.
So I didn't raise my kids like in a cookie cutter fashion where
Yeah.
this is the way you raise kids.
Yeah.
I asked the question, who is this child? And I would ask questions like, how do they focus? Are they good at it? Do they need a lot of help with it? Are they self starters? Do they need somebody alongside of them? I asked the question, what motivates this kid? Like I found that some kids they need authority. They have to be able to have a say in what's happening in their life, or they're not interested. Some kids need lots of attention, and those kids they need to be noticed. They need to be celebrated. Some kids need to just be admired for who they are, and they need to be loved for who they are and not what they do. And some kids they need answers. Like they have a very accurate, focused approach to life, and they need to know the why, they need to know the how, they need to know the reasons behind it, and they need lots of accurate information. So I would ask the question, okay, this child right here, how is this child motivated? And then what creates stress in this child? And what helps lower the stress in this child's life? And what are their what are the gifts that overwhelm them that cause them to act out? Like I learned that one when I was a youth pastor. I started off in youth ministry, and I realized that some kids they're intimidated by their gifts, and so when they're acting out, they're actually they're actually afraid of the thing they're best at. And my middle son was the most obvious example of that. Kid was really good at reading people. Like he would walk in a room and he would sense how people were doing, and he was totally overwhelmed by it. So he was mean to people because it would push people away, and he wouldn't have to deal with the responsibility of feeling what they were feeling. And so a lot of people would tag him as, man, I don't know, he just seems like he's really rough on other kids. And I was like, yeah, he is, but let me tell you why. And so I was able to tell him, hey, Zach, you're not fooling me. I get what's going on. And he finally grew into it. He finally got the strength and the maturity to care enough about people and be able to set up boundaries to where their needs didn't swallow up his life. And I just determined I'm going to figure out who this child is. What do they love? What do they not love? How are they motivated? What gets them excited about things? What creates stress in their life? And how can I address them as an individual? And then as they got older, it was, okay, what is the dream that God put in this child's heart? Like, does this child want to be highly productive? Does this child want to invest in the lives of others? Is this child really creative? Is this child a musician? Is this child an engineer? Like, what does God put in the heart of this child? And how do I help bring that out? And and how do I get them to see it so that when they choose a major in college, it fits their dream?
Did you use any self-assessment tests, gifting tests, the five love languages? Did you do anything along these lines to help, or did you just become a real student? Like, let me listen to who they are.
like
Like,
like
how did you
like
do
like,
this?
like we did it all. We had them like we went through the love languages with them. We went through the disc test, but the child version of the disc test to help them determine basic temperament. And then we did some academic testing to see what areas that in academics they were good at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that created a baseline. But then I determined, these kids are more than test results. Kids are quirky. Kids have their own nuances to them. They have their own interests in life. And so a lot of it was just taking the time to watch them in action and determine, like, what are they naturally drawn to? What are they naturally good at? What are they not good at? And what do they overwork in their life?
It's amazing because people leak who they are.
Yeah.
Like you'll see people, I see this a lot with, it doesn't matter gender, but we'll just, like many moms you see, they have this relational ability,
Yeah.
and this strength becomes a weakness because they're caring for the whole world. Like
Right.
get off the cross, we need the wood. I mean, they're just caring for the
Right.
whole, and they'll just drive themselves into the grave.
Yeah.
I call it the cupcake spirit.
Yep.
Meanwhile, their marriage is on the rocks.
Right.
They got all this stuff going on, and it takes the dad, if you will, to be the leader, be like, no, we don't need to do that. But recognizing that gift, becoming a student, and I guess you can even say the same thing. You become a student of your own wife,
Yeah.
like her abilities or weaknesses. I experienced this also with my daughter Noelle. My daughter Noelle is a free spirit.
Okay.
That means that if she gets her leg caught in a bear trap, she will literally, you know, she'll eat it off. I mean, she doesn't even, she'll die. She doesn't care. She wants to be free. And we needed to like talk about like what real freedom meant,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know, so that
Interesting.
was,
See, my oldest son, I knew when he was really young that this kid was born for leadership
yeah.
because he started bossing kids around at the playground,
Mhm.
and he would instruct kids on the right way to play on playground equipment, and he would start organizing whoever showed up, and I began to realize, okay, this kid's gonna be a leader. And then as he got older, we realized he wasn't born with any tactfulness. So if you weren't doing what he thought was important, you were stupid. We were like, okay, that's not a good life skill to walk around telling people they're stupid. So we had to work on, how do we build tactfulness into this kid's life, and how do we add enough compassion to his leadership ability he doesn't offend everybody that's out there. And it was just a process of helping him grow into who he was.
Yeah.
And then my youngest son, like the kid, everything in life is analytical to that kid, and his hardest subject was creative writing because he didn't see the need for it. He was like, things work a certain way, and you need to figure out how things work, and you just do things the way they work. Why do we have to have all this creative writing stuff?
100%. Yeah. 100%. It's amazing. I love this area because you've taken listening to a new level. You know, the old thing is, how does a child spell love? You know, listen, if you will, LISTN. But you're taking this to a new level. Become a student. Really
Yeah,
make become a student of your children. I love it. It's just very beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, and it was especially helpful for us because one of our kids was diagnosed with ADHD. And if you haven't had the privilege of having an ADHD person in your household, it is a great adventure, or it's the greatest irritation of your life. And trying to figure out, how do we help this kid? Like I'm convinced that ADD is actually a form of brilliance. And I picked it up early because, remember, I told you I was determined to answer every question that my kids asked.
Yeah.
Well, with Brock, it was pretty easy because he set the stage. Our oldest, he would ask a question, he'd wait for the answer, and then he'd ask the next question, and then he'd wait for the answer and ask the next question. Well, then I applied that to Zachary. Zachary would ask a question, halfway through the answer, he'd ask the next question, and then a third of the way through, he'd ask the next question. And I began to realize this guy's mind is just going like at hyper speed. Like this kid's amazing, but he's having a hard time focusing because his mind's moving so fast. And so he started asking the question, how do we work with his mind? Like, if his brain's moving that fast and it's switching from subject to subject so quickly, and it's going from this focus to that focus to this focus to that focus, how do we help this kid? And how are we going to help this kid succeed in school? How are we going to help him succeed in relationships if his brain is ping ponging all over the place? And so we had to start figuring out, how do you sync up this ADHD brain, and how do we use up all the energy that comes with it? Because this kid literally could not learn if he was sitting still. That something on his body has to be moving for him to learn. And my biggest surprise with him was when he got to high school, we told him, hey, you need to do two things in addition to school. Because our conviction was teenagers who sit around and think too much don't do themselves any good. That it's much better if they are busy doing productive, worthwhile things.
A tired boy is a good boy.
Exactly. So we told him, in addition to school, you need to be involved in two things throughout the year. Well, he chose football because my kids are just that kind of people. And then he came home one day and he said, Dad, I know what the second thing I'm going to do is. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, I'm going to do cheerleading. I went, cheerleading? Really? How are you going to do that with football? Because in my mind, like cheerleaders were ones who stood on the sidelines during games and just cheered. He goes, well, no, Dad, there's a competitive cheer club in town, and we're not going to cheer at any games. We're just going to compete. And I went, okay. And he joined this highly competitive cheerleading team. Come to find out, competitive cheerleading is a haven for kids with ADHD for two reasons. One, it's really intense, and the intensity syncs up their brain, and they only have to focus for 3 minutes at a time because they perform to a musical score. So the short term and intense focus
Interesting.
syncs up with their ADHD brain, and in between all that intensity, they get to go goof off in the gym. And
So this actually helped him focus in his academic because he
it
had this
did.
outlet.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then come to find out that kids with ADHD, they focus better in a noisy environment than in a quiet environment. So we had to learn how to strategically create noise in his world to help him focus.
Yeah.
So
I'm
it
sure that wasn't too difficult.
wasn't too difficult.
That's so funny.
but but then sometimes he used it as an excuse because he would just put on his favorite music so he could listen to the music and not do his homework.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
we had to say, no, that's not strategic.
I want to shift gears.
Okay.
When we had dinner together, you challenged me because there's this new shift. I believe that every young man wants to be independent, and sometimes they confuse that desire for independence with disrespect.
Yeah.
How did you launch your children, and what shifted in your, I guess, in your presence and the fact that you're a student, or what just shifted in your relationship with your kids as you launched them?
So let me start with it actually starts when they hit puberty because when kids go through puberty, it's a major shift in their life. Like they go from being kids to going into like this hyper physical development as hormones get dumped into their body. Their body goes into hyper development, and they have a hard time sorting out things mentally. Like they aren't as wise as they used to be, and they're not as wise as they're going to be when they go through this big shift. And because of it, their development becomes highly emotional. And what they start doing is they go from group to group trying on different identities because they're having a hard time thinking through who do I want to be. So they go into different groups and they try on different identities. So their development goes into a more emotional state. And one of the things I know is that the way you guide emotions is through decisions. So if you want to shape your emotions or you want to guide your emotions, you do it through decision making. So we deliberately started passing the decision making to our kids at the onset of puberty. Now we know they're not skilled enough to make all their own decisions, but we wanted to start shifting the responsibility. So the first thing I did is when they hit puberty, I stopped saying no to them and I replaced it with tell me why I should say yes. So if they asked, can I get this? Can I go here? Can I do this with my friends? My response would be, well, tell me why I should say yes. And I was committed. If they could convince me that this was a good idea, I was committed to say yes. I wasn't just playing games with them. But if they couldn't reason through it with me, then I would say to them, hey, look, I can't say yes yet. If you want to keep working on this and come back to me, let me know. But I'm not at a place where I can say yes yet. And so it forced them to make the decision, do I want to work on this? Do I want to give good reasoning behind it? Or do I let it go? And I would give them some prompting. I would say, like, if you want to know what my concerns as a dad are that you would need to address, I'm happy to share those concerns with you. if you hit a roadblock and you need some instruction on how to work through this decision, I'm happy to do some instructing with you. But you're at an age now where you need to start making that decision. And then throughout their teen years, we expanded that. So we kept it informal with simple decisions, but then we formalized some of it. Like we had our kids write a relationship contract. They did one at the beginning of junior high. They modified it at the beginning of high school, and they modified it a third time when they started driving. And it was just their ground rules for relationships. So we had them define what a friendship is, what's the difference between a friendship and somebody you're interested in romantically. Um, if you ever wanted to have a girlfriend, how would you like how would you formalize that? And one of the requirements we had is if you ever want to call a girl your girlfriend, you have to take your relationship contract to her dad because her dad is responsible for her. So you need to communicate to him what he can expect from you, which kept the girlfriend thing at a minimum because the boys didn't want to take that big a step for the most part. And then we had them do a driving contract. Before they could get their license, they had to line out this is what I will do in the car. This is what's not allowed in the car. This is who pays for gas. This is who pays for insurance. So they demonstrated the responsibility to be able to handle driving a car around. And then if I was raising kids today, we would have a technology contract to where
So
they would line out what it takes to be able to handle the responsibility of having a phone or a tablet and being in the online world.
got it. So this desire for independence, where we're launching this 20-year-old, really starts at the habits and the mindset, going back to puberty. And
Yeah.
I actually have done the same thing with our kids.
Uh-huh.
Um, right 13, they get their own bank account. I start pay, they start paying for their own stuff.
Yeah.
I start asking them questions about how many kids they want to have. I started saying, what kind of career do you want to have? Oh, I want to be an accountant. Great. I have a client who's an accountant. Let's set up a time for you to interview him.
Hmm?
So I'm getting them to think I'm not raising a child, I'm raising an adult.
Yeah.
So that's a few things that I've done. And I wish more dads would do this, take this leadership, because I see too many kids when they get to college and they just flounder, whatever the word is. They don't focus. And part of that
Well,
reason is because they weren't given this gift, if you will.
but like I know as parents, we have a tendency to want to protect our kids,
100%.
and to a certain extent, we need to do that.
Yeah.
But we don't do them any favors when we overprotect them. Because if your kid goes away to college and they they don't know how to make decisions, they don't know how to manage finances, they don't know how to discern who's worth spending time with, who's not worth spending time with. They don't know how to fix their car in even the most rudimentary ways. They don't know how to do their own laundry. They don't know how to cook. Like if you launch them and they don't have those skills in place, they're likely going to have a really rough transition into their young adult life. Where if they leave home and they know how to cook, they know how to do their laundry, they know how to manage basic skills in life, they're going to go with confidence. Like I remember the first time we had one of our sons drop us off at the airport because we were already gone for a weekend, and friends of ours said, "You you you let him drive home from the airport all by himself?" And I went, "Yeah, we've been working on it for 2 years, and we've done test runs, and he's proven he can do this, and so yeah, he's a great transporter."
So funny.
Because we want all of our kids at 18 to be self-sufficient so that if they went away to college, they were going with skills and they were going
Yes.
with confidence. We didn't want we didn't want to have to be calling them every week. Did you remember this? You remember this? You remember this? But if they stayed home, then they would be contributing to the household that we had. So if they went to a local college and they were living with us, they weren't a burden, and that way they were ready for their adult life. And so when it came time for them to choose majors in college, that wasn't an overwhelming thing to them because they've been making decisions all along the way.
What is it in the forgive me, but what is it in the parent today that doesn't allow for this, that overprotects? What is in there? I see it happen. You see it. What is the diagnosis here,
Well,
or what is the prescription?
I think there's a couple of things going on. One is I think people are reactive in their parenting. So they don't have a strategy they're working on. And all they see is all of this stuff flying at their kids. And they see the danger because there are dangerous things in our society. And with technology throwing information at them and throwing temptation at them, parents get reactive. They don't know what to do. So they go into protection mode. I think that's the first thing that happens. I think the second thing that happens is there are so many parents today who grew up in broken homes and they didn't see the example. So they lack the kind of the instinctive skills. Because if you watch your parents and they do a good job, you pick up a lot of stuff without knowing it. If you grow up in an environment where you didn't see it modeled, you have to deliberately pick it up. Like I know for Pam and I, we both grew up in pretty chaotic homes. And this kind of stuff you and I are talking about, I didn't learn it from my dad.
Sure.
My,
Sure.
my dad, he was good at his career, didn't really know what to do beyond that. And so when I got married, I was like, I don't know what to do. And I started cornering people at our church who looked like they had good marriages. And I said, how do you do this?
That's
And
student.
then when
Yeah.
Pam and I decided we were going to be parents, we're like, okay, we got to get schooled up because I don't instinctively know how to raise a child. And having been the youngest in my family, I didn't take care of any siblings either, so I didn't even get that as a benefit. So
So
everything
I
I
had a,
learned, I had to learn from other people or learn from books.
but then you came to the table after you've learned, and you had this confidence that you brought to the table. One person asked me the other day, "Is like James, why are you so confident about it? How were you like so confident in your parenting?" And I just want to ask you that question: how did you become so confident because you didn't have this role model?
Well, I started learning what it takes to be a good parent, and then I put it into practice, and it actually worked. Like that's one of the big steps in confidence is you start to see that wow, this is actually working. Like it's not just a theory. It like there's competency here, and so I saw it working in my kids' lives, and I went, wow, this is better. Like one of the things Pam and I did early on is we both came from homes of yellers,
Yes.
and we didn't want to yell at our kids.
Yes.
So we both looked at each other and said, when we really want to get our kids' attention, let's try whispering to them. And I would get down and I would go, hey, kids, come here. I need to talk to you. And it worked so well that I went, wow, this is way better than yelling. And when you have success in the things you're doing, your confidence level goes up. And so I just began to see that this is a much better way to do it. And the, the confidence about having teenagers, I actually picked that up when I was in youth ministry because I saw working with teenagers developmentally if you ask more questions than you make statements and you put responsibility on teenagers' shoulders, they behave better.
Let's piggyback that into their 20s and adolescence. One of the things that I'm learning, I'm not quite an empty nester, but you are,
Yeah.
is that unsolicited advice is considered criticism.
Yeah. See, that's another developmental shift
Tell me.
because during the teen years, your kids make a conclusion about who they are. Like there's an identity phase that sets in, like that going from group to group, trying on different identities. They settle on an identity, and then in their like late teens, like 19 and into their 20s, they go into an application phase where they're taking who they decided they are, they're now putting it into practice. And that developmental shift moves us as dads from being coaches to being consultants. And the rule with consultants is consultants wait to be asked. And if you take that attitude with your young adults, that I am here as a resource, I'm going to wait till they ask. Because if they ask, they're going to buy into the information. If they don't ask, they will see it as you evaluating them and criticizing them. And what I learned is you have to prime the pump on being asked. So I would tell my kids as they were graduating from high school, the summer after they graduated from high school, I would say to them, "Hey, you guys are going to a new phase of life. You're going to have more independence now than you used to have, and you're going to start figuring out the path you want to walk. I just want you to know that if you have any question about any area of life and you're willing to ask me, I will share with you whatever I know in that area. And I will do my best to give you a reasonable, well thought out answer in any area. It can be career, it can be education, it can be relationships, it can be sexual stuff, it can be spiritual stuff. Any area of life, if you ask the question, I will share with you whatever I know in that area. So now I've primed the pump that it's a good idea to ask questions. And what I found is they took me serious on it. That
And how
because
did you
I
keep your
was
how do you keep your mouth shut? Like, how do you censor yourself? Like, oops, like they should be doing X, Y, and Z, and that's going to cost them relationally wise, financial wise. How did you like button it?
so first I prioritized the issues that they were facing. Like A level issues, those are ones that were gonna create damage in their life. Like it's history proves it, their own experience proves it. If they do this, they're going to hurt themselves or hurt somebody else. That became an A level issue, and I confronted those. I would sit them down and I would say, look, I'm your dad. I care about you at a really deep level, and what you are doing right now needs to be addressed. And I don't want to go parental on you, but I'm telling you this needs to be addressed. And I
And
would
you
have
did
a
this
very
to them while
frank
they're in their 20s.
yes.
Okay.
The B level issues are ones that would be inconvenient for them, but it's not going to create major damage in their life. Those areas I would lead with a question, and I would say, "Yeah, I've got some concerns about what you're doing. Are you interested in hearing them?" And if it was a C level issue, which is I wouldn't do it. I think it's dumb, but I don't think it's problematic necessarily. I wouldn't do it. I would never recommend this. Then I would wait for them to ask on that one. So I would prioritize the issues. I mean, the dangerous stuff and the really bad stuff. I mean, that stuff needs to get confronted.
Well, let's talk about just the A because I could see that overprotecting parent making the A as opposed to this big, making it this big.
Yeah.
So they're like all of a sudden they're spirits. What about if they're dating someone and you don't like the person they're dating and you just see heartbreak? What do you do? Is that a B or is that an A? What is that?
Well, the way you described it, that would be a B because you said I don't like them. An A would be this person is leading them into really bad behavior. Like they're over drinking, they're getting into drugs, they're doing moral things that are immoral. Um, the, that one I would confront, and I would say, look, this person is not good for you. I know that you have freedom, like you can choose to be whatever you want. But if you continue going down this path, we're not going to be able to support this lifestyle. Like we're going to pull back finances. We will never pull back love from you, but we will pull back finances because we are not going to help you live a life that's bad for you, that's self-destructive, and it's going to lead you into really bad behavior. So you have a choice to make. Do you want our financial support or do you not? As you go through, finishing college. Because this is not good. Like this person is hurting you. This person is ruining your life, and you're going to be sorry you did this. Like that gets a very direct confrontation. If it's somebody I don't like I wish they were dating somebody else, um, then I think you ask the question: are you sure you want to do this? Like let me just tell you from my experience: if you stay with this person, you can expect this to happen, this to happen, and this to happen. It is your choice. Are you sure you want to do this? And you
And you
come
would
at it from a point of concern rather than correction.
and you would come up with a B question where like I have some thoughts about it. Do you want to hear them or you just want me to keep my mouth shut? That's how you would approach it. This B, this girlfriend that you didn't like, let's say.
Well, if it's becoming a serious relationship, I think you knows your way into sharing your concern, and you lead with something like, "Look, I have some concerns about this relationship. I wouldn't be much of a dad if I didn't share them with you. But the difference is, like when the kids are young, you speak to their mind, and you say to them, you have a decision to make. You need to make a difference. You need to make a change here, and I'm going to help you make that decision." So you're speaking to their mind and you're calling them to action. If they're a young adult and they're in a relationship you would prefer them not to be in, you need to speak to their heart. and you say, look, I have some concerns. If this continues, like, this is what it's going to turn into. Like, if you stay with this person and you get married, you can expect this to happen and this to happen and this to happen, and you're not going to like it. And maybe I don't know this person well enough, and maybe I need to get to know her better or him better. But from what I can see right now, my concern is that it's going to lead you to this kind of a relationship. And I just need to know, as your dad, are you sure that's the kind of situation you want to be in?
So go through those three areas again. A is harmful. B is
B is you're concerned.
concern. C is
C is it's not your
preference.
preference.
Got it. Got it. Got it. You share with me. Ask them for advice. Endorses them as adults. Is that we need to have this shift in
Yeah.
our disposition
So
where we're
after the young adult phase, when they get
yeah.
through they were applying their identity to their life, they then reach a point where they're capable of being peers with you and I. And the goal of parenting is to eventually become their friend. You don't want to do that at 5. You don't want to do that at 8. But by the time they're 25, the hope is that I'm now friends with my kids because they're old enough now. They can actually be a peer relationship. And the way we as dads invite them up to that peer relationship is at some point you're going to recognize your child is better at something than you are. It could be a concept, it could be a manual skill, it could be insight into some area of life, but you're going to start to realize, like, she's actually better than I am at this. And the day that you go to her and you ask her for advice and say, hey, I need your advice on this right here. Do you have a few minutes? That when you ask for their advice, you are raising them up to the level of, hey, we're now on equal footing and now we can be friends. Because I have information to share, you have information to share, and we can now help each other.
You shared with me to be a parent, not an expert. All my life as a dad, I've always been the expert.
Yeah.
But now things shift when they turn, they go into that young adulthood. How do I keep my mouth shut when I know I'm still the expert and they're not? I guess it goes back to that A, B, and C area again,
Well,
right?
if you've trained them that they have decisions to make, you can still utilize that when they're young adults, because you can look them in the eyes and say, you have a decision to make here, and I'm happy to give all the input that I've got into this decision, but you have a decision to make, and this is just part of life. I'm not, I'm not calling you to action as your dad. I am, I am just reminding you that life is real, and you have a decision to make here. And because I care about you, I'm letting you know. And I'm hoping you make the right decision. I'm going to do everything in my power to get you to make the right decision. But you have a decision to make. And where we get in trouble as our kids get older is we make it our decision. And anytime you make a decision for another person, you create emotional turmoil in that person's life. And then they start to get defensive and they get reactive. And then they make decisions out of defensiveness rather than out of wisdom. So it's possible to be very direct and to be firm, but not take the decision making power back.
So anytime we make a decision for someone else who's an adult, it creates turmoil.
Yes.
Wow, that's really good. I see that as a realtor. I do.
And it's based on the principle that our emotions always follow our decisions. So whatever you decide in your life, your emotions get behind it. And it can be a good decision or a bad decision, but emotions are just reactive. So if you say we're doing this, your emotions go, okay, we're doing this. And they will fuel your decision. So when somebody takes that decision away from you, the emotions get frustrated and they go into turmoil because now I have to do his decision. I have to do her decision. It's one of the big challenges in marriage is married couples making decisions for each other. And then they get surprised by it. They're like, what? I have no say in this? And now there's an argument and they don't even know what the argument's about. And it's simply because rather than making the decision together, one of them made it for the other person. And then there's emotional turmoil just floating in the environment. And kids do that with their parents all the time. Parents step in, make the decision. The young adults say, like I'm an adult now. I don't have to listen to you.
We did it when they were younger, when they're in the funnel, if you will,
Yeah,
elementary school, we had to make those decisions for
of
them.
course.
But now
Yeah.
that they're older,
Well, and,
that decision making process creates resentment. That's what I'm hearing you say.
yeah, because when they're young, the, they they believe you are correct. Like that's how kids are wired. Is my parents are correct. So whatever I see in my parents, that's real life. And so they pick all that up when they're young. At puberty, it all starts to shift, and the independence starts to develop. And from that point forward, the more decisions you make for them, the more it cripples them emotionally.
Got it. Interesting. That's fascinating.
So as parents, we have to make the shift.
Yes, yes, and that's that making that shift is really just I find it for myself just button it. Like you would say, it's a C issue. It's my
Yeah,
preference.
yeah,
They got to make the bed that they sleep in. It's their prerogative. I just got to because if I don't, that will create resentment.
yeah.
Got it. I have one other question for you regarding presence.
Okay.
What I mean by presence is, let's say there's a tremendous sense that many parents have with their kids as they grow up. They're buddy buddies. They're just very very close, and as they get launched into adulthood, that shifts. And I've seen parents overinterpret that silence as like they don't love me anymore,
Right.
or they just overinterpret that silence. What advice would you give to that mom or dad?
Well, I would encourage people to do what we did with our kids. Like when our kids got married, we asked them to define our role in their life. And and we even did that with one of our sons before he got married because he got married later than the other two. And we just asked him, hey, now that you're an adult, what role would you like to see me play in your life? And when they have the opportunity to define it, you have the opportunity to give your input. So when our kids were defining our role, we would ask them questions like, well, we want to stay in contact with you. Like, what would be the appropriate amount of time for us to call? Do you want us to call weekly? Do you want us to call monthly? Do you want to talk daily? Like, how often do you want to talk? And when they start having kids, we'd ask them, what role do you want us to play in your child's life? Like, do you want us to share advice? Do you want us to withhold it? Do you want us to like regularly come see your kids? Do you want us to babysit? Do you like what role do you want us to have? And if the kids define the role, they own it. And now you've got permission to be in your kids' lives. If you try to push yourself in as a parent, you get the resistance again. Not because they don't like you, but because they're like, let me be an adult. And if they're defining the role, you have now given them the permission to be an adult. And and as a parent, if we can humbly accept, okay, I have a new role, then it works pretty well. The problem I see is that as parents, we stay too involved. We want to bring all of our wisdom to the table. We want to keep instructing. We want to keep guiding. And once our kids have their own life, like, that's not really well. Like none of us wanted our parents to do that for us, so we need to not do it for our kids. And and what I have found is if you give the kids respect to do that, they will take it seriously, and they will define for you the role they want you to have. And then the other thing I encourage parents to do is just stay in rhythm with your kids. Like life gets busy, when your kids get busy, they have a harder time keeping track of all of it. So if you can stay in rhythm, like if your rhythm early on is, well, I call my kids once a week, just keep calling once a week. And if they don't answer one week, don't worry about it. Don't get upset about it. Don't get offended. Just call the next week and stay in rhythm with them. Because if you stay in rhythm, they'll know, okay, my parents are still around, but they're not pushy. And like if they miss a call, on the next call, don't complain that they didn't answer the phone last time you called. Just stay in rhythm with them. Because these relationships are enduring. They go through some rough seasons at times, but they are enduring. And the thing I would hate to see happen, like there's this new trend where kids are deciding, I think it's best if my parents are not in my life. And it's usually happening because everybody's trying too hard. And if we will intentionally say, you know what, we did it. We got our kids raised. They're now adults. And it's okay. I can trust that if I give them more autonomy and more decision making ability, they will decide to stay connected. And if I force it, they're going to push back. If I lean into it and let it happen, most likely they're going to invite me in. And I can tell you, as somebody, like, you started off this podcast, how many books have you written? I can tell you, my kids and grandkids are not they're not impressed. Like they don't come to me with our books and say, "Hey, could you explain to me this principle that's on page 52? Can you?" Like, none of that happens. They just want to know that, hey, Dad showed up, Grandpa showed up, and he's happy to be with us. And every once in a while, they reach out and they ask for advice, and they want the wisdom that I have to share.
That's interesting because it's presence, but it gets redefined, and it's
Yeah,
redefined by what the kids want.
yeah,
But then there's also this rhythm thing where I'm still going to call you once a week, once every other week,
yeah,
kind of whether you like it or not.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
that how that works?
yeah. And as long as you have the attitude, hey, I'm just checking in. It like there's an interesting thing that happens later on in life is you start to realize that family relationships are really critical. Like when you're in the middle of the whole college experience, you have high school, college. Everybody's like, I know, we spend time together all the time. We see each other all the time. You're too involved in my life, and I'm trying to break away. And then later on, when you get to be 35, 40, 45, you start to realize most of my relationships are transient. Like they come and go. Career relationships, they're good for the career, but they don't endure past the career. But my family is still there. And so there becomes a whole new appreciation for family if you just stay at it and you stay calm. Don't get frantic about it. Don't worry about what happened this week. Just stay at the task. Stay in rhythm. Like one of the most stunning things to me about my dad is if you were going to ask me, grade your dad on how he did. Up until about 75, I would have given him mediocre grades. Something happened between 75 and 80. He decided he was going to start talking. Like up until then, he didn't have much to say. And he started sharing the family story. He even told me one day, he goes, if you have any questions you want to ask about the family, about our history, about, why things were the way they were, feel free to ask. I'm like, I don't think my dad means it. So I started asking him questions and he started talking. And my dad's best decade as a contributor to the family was his 80s. And by the time he passed away, he had a relationship with every one of his grandkids. Which in my family is remarkable because in my family, when people get married, they break their relationship with their parents and they don't interact for the rest of their life. So the fact that all of his grandkids had a relationship was phenomenal. And and by the time my dad passed away at 92, I could honestly say he was one of my friends. I wouldn't have said that at 75. And so his contribution in his 80s was his best decade as a man in the family. And
And that's beautiful because you became a student of your dad,
yeah,
which produced presence. It's very beautiful. Yeah.
and I believe what prompted that was everybody else in my dad's life had disappeared. Like all the people he'd worked with, all the people that he'd been in he did remote control flying airplanes. They'd all disappeared. He'd outlived most of his classmates in college, but his family was still there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
suddenly he realized these are the people that matter.
That's awesome. Awesome. Bill, where can people find out information about your coaching, a little bit more about Bill and Pam?
If you go to our website, which is love-wise.com, and if you forget the website, just do any internet search on waffles and spaghetti, and I guarantee you will be on the first page. Because of our book, Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti, and not too many people are putting those two things together.
That's fantastic. Bill, I can't, this is, wow, this is so good. I got to listen to this and take notes. You got a deep well here. Thank you so much for spending some time with me
Well,
today. I
James,
really
thank
appreciate
you for the opportunity, and thanks for investing in your kids. because I know the future generations will appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks again.